We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hello there, and welcome to another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast. Your host today, Coach Chris Wilson. So honored and excited to have a conversation today with Dr. Paul White, a gentleman I came to know a little while back at a first-time conference that we attended in Orlando, a little bit up the road from where we are. I'm based here in Clearwater, Florida, where Critical Bench is based. So we love Orlando events because we can shoot right up there. And we got to hear Dr. Paul White speaking about really his book and all the lessons from his book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And I took some notes. I have my notebook in front of me, and there's some great information here I want to cover in this conversation today that I know will be a huge benefit to our listenership. And I'd love to take a quick second to say thank you so much for being a listener of the Strong by Design podcast. We're over 200 episodes now in our 4th season. Things are going extremely well. And for us, it's not monetized. It's a ministry for us. We do so much in the world of fitness and health. And this is the one area of the business where we're able to really tackle other things that are so vital in life, like leadership and coaching and relationships and culture and all these things, and faith, of course, which is part of all of that. And so Dr. White is gracing us with his presence on the conversation today. But I want to give you a little bit of backstory about where he hails from and what he has been doing in the world. He's a psychologist. He's an author, a speaker, and consultant who makes work relationships work, which is not an easy thing to do. He has written numerous articles for lots of different platforms: Bloomberg's Business Week, CNN, Fortune.com, Entrepreneur.com, FoxBusiness.com, U.S. News and World Report, to name just a few. He's the co-author of 3 books, including The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, the basis for our conversation today. That was co-authored with Dr. Gary Chapman, the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The 5 Love Languages, which is, sold well over 250,000 copies now, correct?
It sold 20 million copies, yeah.
Well, that one in particular,
yeah.
But even your book.
Ours has sold 500,000 copies.
Yeah, 500, right. So yeah, the information I'm looking at, I know, is outdated. He's helped create also a very cool online assessment tool called Motivating by Appreciation Inventory, which has been taken by over 100,000 employees and in their appreciation at work training resources. And it's going to colleges, universities, medical facilities, schools, organizations, government agencies, and used in over 25 countries. So I'm just really honored to have you on the call today, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Chris. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, no, it's great. You started off your presentation last month by saying something that I had never really given much thought before, but it's so very true. And it's a great distinction for people, is that employee recognition doesn't equal authentic appreciation. Could you unpack that a little bit for our listeners, the difference between recognition and appreciation?
Sure. Most people who've been in the work world, some know about employee recognition programs. Over 90% of the companies and organizations that exist have those. And it can be as small as sending out sort of an automatic email on your birthday, or it can be pretty complex. But recognition really has been designed to help recognize and reward performance, reaching goals and doing sort of above and beyond, which is a good thing. We want to support that. But we really believe that appreciation views the whole person. It's not just about performance, because first of all, employee recognition programs tend to only touch or reach the top 10 or 15% in a group. I mean, you sort of hit the stars, right? Well, that leaves us big middle group, 50 to 60% of people who are working hard, trying to do the best we can, we just don't hear anything. And that's a problem, because one research study showed that 79% of the people who leave a job voluntarily cite a lack of appreciation as the reason that they're leaving. Most managers think people leave for more money, but that's actually not the case. They leave when they feel like people don't really care about them or value them. And so authentic appreciation, and we emphasize that because we don't want to just try to teach people how to look like they appreciate somebody. We're not about that, right. But it's about valuing them as a person. And it can be for work-related things, performance, but we have other things that we bring that are valuable, that are not necessarily related to the tasks of getting things done.
Yeah, exactly right. I like that distinction as well, as being authentic in it, and not just being robotic or just doing it as a well, I kind of need to do this.
Yeah, or the checklist that you check off.
Yeah. People see through that pretty darn quickly, don't they?
Right. And so for example, sometimes people say, well, how can you really appreciate, or should you appreciate somebody who's not performing at their best? Personally, I like to work with cheerful people more than grumpy people. It's not going to show up on their performance, evaluation, but it's something I can value, or I can value somebody that's, training for a half marathon or something like that, and say, hey, that's cool that you got the discipline to do that. Or maybe a single mom who's just really committed to her kids, and say, man, Maria, I'm just so impressed with how you just love and are committed to your kids. And it's not about work, but it's about her. And that kind of communication will really create some ties and loyalty to your organization.
Yeah, exactly. And you said something else like, that kind, and people, again, it's when you hear things, you say, yeah, of course. But oftentimes we need to be reminded of the important things in life, as simple as they might be. But kindness, you said, is love in action. And and that's kindness is showing appreciation to somebody, where they can really feel it, and it can be about just about anything.
Yeah. And the other sort of misconception that a lot of people have, and especially leaders, is that, one, appreciation isn't the same as recognition, but appreciation isn't just words. And that's why we have the 5 languages, because we actually had over 300,000 people take our assessment now, and good data, and shows that, less than half of the workforce actually have words as their primary way they want to be shown appreciation. So if we only use words from the get-go, we're sort of missing half of our people in how they really want to be shown appreciation. Yeah,
you had a lot of terrific statistics based on studies with large groups of people. You're not talking 100 people. I mean, you're tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
And so you're collecting data that really means something.
Yeah. And it's global, and it's in different languages too. I mean, English primarily, but we have our assessment in Spanish and in Chinese and other things too. So it's interesting to see how things, sort of vary a little bit across the world, but the 5 languages seem to be pretty cross-cultural and relevant.
Yeah, right. Human beings are human beings, right?
Exactly. Right.
I have a couple of the actual stats. One you already alluded to: 79% of people leave a job because they don't feel appreciated. Whereas I think a lot of people would say, oh, geez, I would thought 80% leave because they're not making enough money. But
right.
65% of North Americans report no recognition in the past year.
They haven't. They say they haven't received any. Whether or not, I think there's things that are being sent, but it's not hitting the mark, and so it's sort of the same as not getting it. Right?
Exactly right. 87% of job seekers, their number one thing is to feel valued.
Right. Yeah, that surprised me. It's like the data is like, wow, this really is an important deal. So
unbelievable. And then feeling appreciated is the number one factor that contributes to job satisfaction. So when someone is shown through their employer, through their team, through their leaders, their supervisors, the people, that are kind of leading the charge in the business, the organization, if they're passing down that appreciation, that's what's going to keep the good people there. Otherwise, people will go elsewhere to find that, to seek that.
Right.
And some people, I think it's maybe even a bit subconscious. I don't, do some people even, I know there's a lot of people that are working for the money, for the paycheck. And they're like, I don't care how I'm treated. I need to make, 6 figures a year. I don't really even like my job.
Well, I think clearly at the baseline level, you got to earn enough to live off of, right? And so if you're not, appreciation is sort of, that's out there a little bit, but assuming you're, sort of in the pay range, generally you should be. It actually, part of the issue is that what drives us to perform can be monetary or other kinds of financial things, but it's interesting. There's just a slight difference of what sort of get you to decouple, to unhook, to disengage and leave is not money, but it's that you don't feel like anybody really values, or appreciates you. So, and it's important, I think, also just to follow up on something you said, that one of the things we learned is this is not just for supervisors and managers to do. It's not their sole responsibility because, they can't do it for everybody. And more younger workers really value peer and collegial relationships more than just, top down with their supervisor. And so one of the things that we've learned over time is to provide training. And we have an online train the trainer course that people can take and do it yourself, the whole team, so that it's not just, the manager, but, colleagues, people you work with, they show appreciation, you show appreciation, and it works. It spreads out the responsibility. And plus, when you're discouraged or having a bad day, your colleagues are going to know before your supervisor typically. And so they're the ones that can really respond first as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of factors that play into it, obviously. And then I love what you said, because it's so true. And it's so built into our vocabulary and just the knee-jerk response to people. We say, good job.
Yeah.
Good job. And you said, good job sucks. Don't say it.
I don't think I quite said it that way, but that was the message. The message.
It was maybe not so blunt, but it was pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the deal is we have 100,000 people on our newsletter list that we send out to every week. And we do polls occasionally. We did a poll and said, what don't you like to hear? And good job was one of the top ones because it's too vague. Anybody can say it. It doesn't take a lot of thought. And we really teach, and so words of affirmation is one of the languages, right? And so 46% of employees have that as their primary language. So that's a big group. So if we're going to use words, we better do it right. So we teach a model of, if you're going to give a compliment or show appreciation, use a person's name. They like to hear a name. If you're writing it, be sure and spell it correctly, because that doesn't go well if you misspell it. And then be real specific about what you value. You might say, hey, Becca, thanks for, staying late and cleaning up the conference room last night. And the third part is why it's important, either to you, the organization, or the client. Say, Becca, thanks for staying late, clean that up. Because that way this morning it was good to go when we had this, team meeting and didn't have to rush around. Yeah. So trying to be as specific as possible really makes it feel more genuine and authentic to the recipient.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, it can be something big. It could be something pretty kind of basic, but it's just finding that, finding the positive messaging, in that, and being able to pass it along. People just need to be lifted up. I think, the hustle and bustle of life, everything's so fast paced that we take a lot of things for granted. And the simplest thing of, recognizing or acknowledging a stranger even, or when you're getting your coffee. I mean, there's so many easy ways to just show kindness and appreciation to people, whether you know them intimately or you never met them before in your life, but it does have that ripple effect.
Yeah. In fact, there's some new, there's all kinds of things coming out in neuroscience. And one of the things they find is that looking at somebody in the eye and engaging their face and smiling, it has a huge impact on the other person. It's almost like they feel seen, right? They feel like, hey, somebody notices I exist. And you can do that in the Starbucks line or whatever, grocery store. And so you're right. It can be just small little things. If you just sort of, not stare at somebody, but I mean, look them in the eye and smile and say, hey, thanks, or I hope you're having a good day or whatever. It can help turn things around.
Yeah, it really can. They could be maybe having kind of a bad day, right, or just got bad news, or they're, it could be any number of things, but just that one interaction could really leave them in a completely different headspace afterwards. And, that's the power of connection and showing kindness, kind of anywhere, any place, any time that you can. Our team would like to thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. And if you're enjoying today's show, please share this episode with at least one friend or family member who will benefit from this message. And please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show. What are some of the reasons why people don't feel valued? Could you cover some of those off the top of your head?
Well, they don't feel valued because, they just don't hear anything. Most people say, unless I've made a mistake, I don't hear much, right? And so it's not that they feel critiqued all the time. It's just that they don't hear much. And so I think, like you said, we sort of take it for granted. And really culture, people talk about workplace culture and how you create it and all that. Culture is really pretty easy to understand. Culture is the aggregated sum of hundreds and thousands of individual interactions, right? So it's the sum of me interacting with my assistant, with our accountant person, whatever, and them interacting. And so as we change individual interactions, it changes sort of the milieu, the feeling of what's going on around us. And so it doesn't take a lot to make a difference. And one of the things, though, is not everybody feels appreciated in the same way, right? That's why I had the 5 languages. So there's some people that words just don't cut it. There's some people that have learned, unfortunately, that people say things they don't mean, or they say things they don't follow up on. And so they've learned, hey, words are cheap. I don't trust people's words. You guys show it to me. So that's where quality time, spending time with somebody, checking in and see how they're doing. Active service is, doing a little something to help them out when they're working on a project and they need some extra help. Those make a difference. So you got to use the language and the actions that are important to the recipient. One of the things that is natural, right, is we tend to start out by using our own language because that works for us. So we think it will work for other people. Right. But not everybody has the same language or even actions that we do. Quality time's an interesting one that, I'm a boomer. And, for boomers, quality time typically meant time with your supervisor or your manager. It's like, man, if they spend time with you, that was great, and either you could give input or get instruction. For younger employees, that's less true. They're more about hanging out with their friends and their peers. So it's time with their colleagues, going to lunch, going out after work, maybe going to a game. And so we got to get the action right. Because if, I've had people tell me, I don't want time with my supervisor. They're pretty intense and I'm sort of shy. And it's like, this is uncomfortable. So you got to get the right language and action. And that's where our assessment helps out, is it specifies not only the language, but the actions that are important to each person.
Yeah. So true. And so vitally important, right? It's like, I don't feel like hanging out with my boss at all. Right. But I do like the people I work with. So if he wants to pay for us to have a day together to go enjoy each other's company doing an activity, like right. that's a total win. Right. Whether he's part of it or not, I don't care.
Right.
As long as I'm with my peers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Pretty cool. You said something else that was really great. You said appreciation works like oil. It helps things work and move better in the business. And it really is. What happens to your engine, right? If you're not changing your oil, it seizes up, it stops working, it breaks, and you have to replace it. Same thing happens in the workplace. If you're not, it's real, like you said, that it's the culture, it's all the interactions. It's a sum of all those interactions in the workplace. And if appreciation is not there or value is not shown, and not felt, it's then what
well, bad things happen. I mean, if you think about a lack of oil, what happens? Things start to create heat. There's tension, there's sparks, they get stuck, they don't move, right? And some people, I understand, they say, this appreciation stuff sort of touchy-feely, psychobabble kind of stuff. And I understand it, but that's not really the goal. I mean, that's one of the goals, but the other goal is we want the organization to work well. We got all kinds of research that shows when team members feel valued. In fact, new research came out in the Harvard Business Review 2 weeks ago, that teams that when they feel valued, they outproduce and they're more profitable than teams that don't. Turnover goes down, absenteeism goes down, customer service ratings go up, less conflict. Managers like their job more because they're not having to deal with stupid, heat and conflict that doesn't really need to happen. Yep. So, it's practical as well as, just valued interpersonal interactions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, all the confirmation's there, right? It's like these studies continue to be done and new stuff comes out that just confirms.
Yeah. It's sort of like, we do better if we breathe, eat well, exercise, get some sleep. It's like, hello, yeah.
It's pretty simple, right? But it's hard to follow. Simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Right.
So you have, talk about for a moment the 4 ways to value people.
Well, let's see. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
You had 4 simple things that you had discussed, and I'll break them down and you can talk about them. You said, right. Number 1, do it regularly.
Okay.
2, do it in a language valued by the recipient, which you've already obviously talked about, like what works for them, not necessarily what works for you.
Right.
Make it personal and individualized, which again is kind of plays on that. And it needs to be viewed as authentic, which is the most important thing. So those 4.
So one of the things, like in recognition, it's out there, but it's not working. And so it's like, well, how come it's not working? Well, because for appreciation, which is person to person, right? I mean, it's between 2 people. It's not just organizational. It needs to happen regularly. If you just say something or do something once a year, probably not going to make that much impact. So it's got how often, it sort of depends, but more than once or twice a year, probably. Secondly, it needs to be in the way that's meaningful to the recipient, right? So we're focusing on, okay, how do they want to be appreciated versus me? And it has to be about them. And part of that has to do with, a lot of people will send out sort of group emails and say, way to go team, we met our goal for the quarter. That's fine. But that doesn't really talk about what, John did to stay extra late to work with clients and get extra hours or whatever. So you want to talk specifically to them and directly versus indirectly. And the perceived authenticity really has to do with that specificity as well as consistency. I mean, right. I mean, that you're not treating them crappy, one day and then say, oh man, you're the greatest and try to, compliment them. And sometimes we have stuff from the past. Maybe you had a disagreement with somebody. And if all of a sudden you bust out and try to show appreciation without addressing that, it doesn't feel, realistic. So you just say, hey, we had disagreement about this. I got it. But in spite of that, I really do value how creative you are in bringing it to our team. And so, and part of it is that if you communicate regularly in the ways that's meaningful to them and it's about them, over time, it will be perceived as genuine and authentic. And that's the way you get there. You can't just sort of stomp your foot and say, I do too appreciate you. Why don't you get it? So it's just, hanging in there and sort of doing it day by day, week by week over time.
Yes. Which is a commitment to things is a challenge for lots of people, commitment to a physical fitness regimen, a commitment to eating better, a nutrition plan of some kind, commitment to, daily reading, people, sometimes it's hard to stay the course with things, but in the professional world, in the workplace, it's just kind of one of those things that if you want to have a successful business with 10, 20, 100 people, you got to find ways to lead them properly.
Yeah. And we talk about appreciation needing both structure. Yeah. So it's like, maybe at your team meetings to make sure that you open up with, hey, somebody share something positive, and so you incorporate, you don't want to create new meetings because nobody needs more meetings, but you add on to what's already there. But you also need some spontaneity, because if everything's just structured, it feels sort of mechanical and impersonal. And so it's like, hey, in fact, once my team said, hey, there was a place that went up that had those new shaved ice thing, and said, hey, let's go. It was hot out. Let's go do that. So we just busted out and did that. It wasn't planned or anything. So, I mean, because if you think about life, it's both structure and spontaneity, and you got to have both for it to really feel lifelike.
Yes, exactly. For some of our audience, they may not be familiar with the 5 love languages. Could you, without getting into any great detail, but just kind of go through what those 5 are, what they look like?
Sure.
And because there's going to be people that are like, oh, I'm not familiar with that book. I'm not familiar with what, I don't even know what my love language is. So
right.
I think in talking through them, someone's probably going to go, oh, that's probably mine. And then of course there is obviously a little test that you can take to figure it out.
Yeah. So the 5 love languages and the 5 languages of appreciation are the same in name, right? But they look differently how they're applied. So words of affirmation, we already touched on. Quality time, also in the workplace, it can be individual or group. Acts of service, which are small things that help make a day go better for somebody. It could be bringing in something from their car if they have a hard time carrying stuff, or it could be when they're working hard on a time limited project, what can you do to help them out? Maybe, sort of take interruptions or phone calls so they can stay focused, that kind of stuff. Then tangible gifts in the workplace are not bonuses and raises. It's just small things to show that you're getting to know your friends. I mean, bring in the favorite cup of coffee. Maybe they're, a Tampa Bay fan, and you get them a magazine, that highlights the team or something like that. It doesn't have to be big. It's like we were talking before. Your wife went to K-State. I'm a KU fan. Jayhawk. Don't give me K-State stuff. I mean, I'll pass it off to a friend, but it's doing nothing for me, right? So that kind of thing. And then physical touch is always the one that people wonder about. We wondered about whether to keep it in or not, but we both felt like we didn't want to advocate a touchless society, even in the workplace, because appropriate physical touch in the right situation and relationship can be deeply meaningful, especially in sort of like traumatic kinds of situations. Yeah. But the other thing is it just happens. I mean, it's like largely a spontaneous celebration, right? It's a high five when you finish a project. It's a fist bump when you solve a problem, maybe a congratulatory handshake when you reach a goal or make a sale. So it's there. It varies culturally and regionally. I lived in Atlanta for a while in the Southeast. They're more touchy. They do hugs and side hugs.
Right.
Northeast, New York, you're just sort of nodding across the room saying, hey, that's about it.
Right.
But then you have, our Latin and our Hispanic friends that, kiss each other on the cheek. And, it would feel very cold and impersonal to not have any kind of touch with the people that they want in the way that they want. And yes. So those are all there. And it's just helpful to find out other people. And some people say, I don't want anybody to touch me ever, anytime. And you honor, the boundaries of the recipient.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. To help our show reach more listeners just like you, please let us know how we've changed your life by leaving a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
Funny story real quick too. I'm sure you're familiar with Craig Groeschel.
Sure. Yeah.
Speaker, pastor of Life Church, great guy, has a great podcast. I've attended Global Leadership Summit multiple times. He's the lead host of that. But he had a great story that he shared, and I'll give you the quick version of it. They call a fist bump a gold star,
right?
In his organization. And there was so it was a big deal because Craig's obviously pretty animated, big personality. And he has moments where he goes around and he gives people gold stars, right?
Right.
Fist bumps. that are more meaningful and filled with a lot of energy and passion. And there was this person that was that worked for him that was like wanting their gold star so bad that they came running out of the building to chase him down before he left so that they could get their gold star, their fist bump. That was really meaningful to them. And they didn't want to, go into the weekend, let's say, without it. Right. And it just shows you, and that's physical touch. It's a fist bump, but it obviously it means so much more to the staff, to that team member. And it's just like, I see you. I know what you did. It is appreciation. And I would hate to see any organization lose, that element. And I know that's what you're alluding to, is like you can show the physical appreciation in different ways based on what the recipient is okay with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. I love it. Obviously, core principle number one, we had already talked about that not everyone feels appreciation the same way. And that's so important to know what their love languages are, why this is such a beneficial thing to have your staff take these little tests,
Well, and part of it also is so that you're not doing the same thing for everybody. And so you got to write a note to everybody, and then you got to go check in with everybody and help. It's like, you're wasting a bunch of time. Part of the issue is we want to make people effective, efficient, and, get the job done. So it's like, find out what they want, communicate it that way, and then move on. You don't have to, do the same thing for, 30 or 40 people.
Exactly. Yeah. And my employer is really good about doing that as well. He, a couple of months ago, wanted to reward us and show appreciation for job well done. We'd gotten a big project done and live, and it was performing quite well. And so he gave the girls that work here an option to either do to have an exotic car for a couple of days, like a rented exotic car that it could drive, or $500 cash and a limo for the day to go on like a spending spree, wherever they wanted. Yeah. They chose that, but he and I chose the exotic car. So I got a Ferrari and he got a McLaren, and we enjoyed an awesome car for a couple of days because that's what we wanted. Yeah. And so it's nice when you give people the option for things rather than just throwing one thing everyone's way.
And one thing about gifts that we know is that in this context at work, it is the thought that counts. It's not the amount. And so you don't have to spend a boatload of money. But one way to offend people, one of the things we found out with the language of appreciation is it's also the language often they're most easily offended in, right? So if somebody really values gifts, one way to offend them is that you give everybody the same thing, because that basically says, I didn't think about this. It's just like everybody gets a mug with a pin, or whatever it is. And so the same thing, like with time, if somebody values quality time and a group is going out to lunch and they're not invited, they're more likely to be offended by that than something else. Yeah. People with words, they're sort of more sensitive to critique or criticism. So you don't have to say much. And they get it. And then, acts of service, if you're just talking at them, but never help them out, then they're typically not very pleased about that.
No doubt about that. I'm more of I'm kind of a touchy feely guy, but I'm also a quality time guy. And that would be, if everyone was going to do something or invited to something to be together and socialize, and I wasn't made aware or I wasn't, no one told me, I'd feel like really upset.
Yeah. So the way people can find out, because people say, well, how do you know? Well, it's a difficult conversation. I mean, you don't say, if you want to show me appreciation, or if you want me to, how do I do it? That's sort of weird. And you can't really watch them because there's not enough data points. So that's really why the assessment is important. And we've actually included a code for taking the assessment in the book. So if you buy the book, you get a code, or you can go to our website. It's appreciationatwork.com, and it's the word appreciationatwork.com. And you can buy codes for your team and take it and then chart it out.
Yeah, that's great. We probably, I have a small team here. We have a larger team globally because a lot of people work remote. And you had touched on that, is that the remote versus the on-site employees. you had mentioned some keys to effectiveness there.
Yeah.
Could you just share your thoughts on that for a moment?
Yeah, this last year during COVID and the pandemic and all that, we actually did research comparing on-site employees versus remote and working from home employees, and what's important as far as showing appreciation. And one of them is you need to be proactive, right? Because if they're not there, you don't see them, you don't walk by their office and get reminded or stick your head in, or you don't see them in the break room or whatever. So you got to be proactive, and that means you got to sort of make a note to yourself and say, reach out to Jennifer or Tom or whoever. Secondly, it's not just about the managers, that people want to, again, interact with their peers. So if you're a leader, it may be helpful to facilitate interaction between either on-site staff and remote, or the remote team. I know when we were all remote last year, we had some team meetings that it was just, we ordered in lunch for everybody at their house and just sat and chatted, just to stay connected. And that's the third piece, is it needs to keep at a personal level. That most Zoom communication at work is about tasks, and which makes sense. It needs to be, whether it's a project or the budget or whatever. But you don't have those sort of just spontaneous interactions before, after the meeting, of asking about, hey, did you see the game last night? Or, how are your kids doing in soccer or whatever? And so we need to still have those. Otherwise, our interactions just become about tasks, and people just feel like work units. They're just, a worker bee, and you don't give a rip about their life, and nobody knows. And so you got to keep, so proactive, peers involved, and then at a personal level.
Yes. So important. And, we have business relationships with people I've never been in a room with in my entire life, but I've known them for 10 years, and we have a great relationship. We text and we email, and we've talked through Zoom or Skype or anything, and they're on the other side of the world or whatever, but I still try to make them feel like part of the team. Yeah. One of our video editors, his son is having a heart issue. And so instantly I was in one of our platforms where we are all connected, where all projects and stuff are housed. And I immediately put in a prayer request. And then all of us prayer warriors would start, and you should see just cool. People, everybody, say, oh, I got you. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And the pictures were shared. And it's just, it makes you feel like you're part of something that's meaningful, and it has nothing to do with work.
Right.
We're connected through work, but this is personal stuff and important stuff. And we're all got each other's back. And it makes you feel good. That's why people stick around. We're social. We need community. We do. We need support. And that's one of the things, with remote workers, we did research to find out who was functioning and, surviving okay with working from home and who was struggling. And one of the key factor was, were they staying connected with their colleagues? Yes. And because we need each other, we have up and down days, and sometimes we need just a little encouragement or a word. And so it's important to know that somebody's thinking about us. Yeah, it really is important. One more thing I wanted to touch on is that you had said character is action taken over a period of time. Just talk about that. It's obviously it's like your integrity, your character, who you are at your core, and how you act on a regular basis.
And part of it ties into the words of affirmation, that if somebody values words, the way to really grab their heart is to talk about their character. Because there's a difference between saying, hey, Ben, thanks for, showing up regularly for our meetings, that's good. But versus saying, hey, Ben, man, I really value that you are dependable, that I can, if I ask you to do something, or if I, there's something to be done, I know you'll get it done. Dependability, or the character issue is like, man, they're like, they'll go to war for you, And so, character is about behavior that's demonstrated over time with different people in different situations. You say, hey, they're not just patient with me, they're patient with everybody, even in difficult situations. That's always sort of the challenge for us, right? It's to to grow in those in the more challenging situations or even relationships.
Yeah, without question. But pointing out something like that just touches them emotionally in a much different way. And there's more of a connection there that forms where they see me for who I am and who,
right.
It's, not just the fact that I got the spreadsheet done on time,
Right. Exactly.
That's pretty great. So where you had given the link earlier for could you give that again one more time, and then a couple other places where people can find out what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So our sort of mothership website is appreciationatwork.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Dr. Paul White, or on Facebook, Appreciation at Work. Pretty much Appreciation at Work, you'll find us. And if you put my name in there, you'll get to us because, I've done, 500 articles and, interviews and stuff. So we're out there. And if people are in it, it's got information about the book, about the assessment, about our training materials. We've also done research and have resources on toxic workplaces if you're stuck in a place like that and how to deal with that. So yeah, we'd love to help people out.
That's great. Yeah. Great resources. And yes, if you just type your name in or appreciation in the workplace, there's a lot there to sift through. So people will be able to easily find out what you're doing in the world. I appreciate you for a couple of reasons. Number one, for making time to speak with us and to just get some great insights. And then, of course, just for doing the work that you do. It's so beneficial and so meaningful and really changes the organization that people work within, the chemistry between people, the way people treat each other. It's like this is it goes beyond just, being a success in what you do at your job and making money. There's more to life than that. Yeah. And I think this is encouraging that and moving people in a better direction. So well, thanks, Chris.
Yeah. I appreciate, and I'm thankful to God that he's given me the opportunity to use the gifts and talents and training I have in a way to help make people's lives better and help them, get a sense of who he is and how much he loves us as well. Yeah. So darn right. All right. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul White. And we thank you, listeners, for choosing Strong by Design. Now's the time to hit that 5-star rating. Leave us a review. No matter what platform you listen to, we would appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much. And as always, we'll be back next week on Wednesday with another episode here on Strong by Design. God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.